Okay, so today we're jumping into a story that honestly sounds like something out of a movie. We got massive amounts of gold, alleged international fraud, and this incredible legal backdrop involving colonial-era treaties.
It really is fascinating. We're talking about Nizar Mohamed and his son Azzuddin Mohamed from Mohammed's enterprise in Guyana.
Exactly. And what we want to do in this deep dive is unpack the whole situation specifically. The U.S. government's move to extradite them from Guyana.
Yeah, we need to look at the charges, of course, but also the process. How does this even work legally? What just happened in court?
Right, because there was this key court date, November 10th, 2025, right?
Yeah.
In Georgetown, before Principal Magistrate Judy Latchman.
That's the one. And it wasn't about guilt or innocence yet. It was really about the U.S. showing they'd ticked all the procedural boxes.
Which, as we'll get into, are surprisingly complex boxes to tick.
So
let's start at the beginning. What are the actual accusations? How big are we talking here?
we're talking big. There's an indictment. It was unsealed back on October 6, 2025 by a U.S. grand jury, Southern District of Florida.
And the charges listed, I mean, it's quite a list.
Oh, absolutely. It covers wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, conspiracy.
Aiding and abetting, customs violations.
Yeah.
It feels like they threw the book at them.
Well, it paints a picture of, let's say, a very coordinated effort and the main target, allegedly defrauding the government of Guyana.
How?
The indictment says that between 2017 and June 2024, they conspired to basically skip out on export taxes and royalties.
For gold.
For a lot of gold, over 10,000 kilograms.
Hold on. 10,000 kilograms.
10,000.
Okay, let's put that in perspective for everyone listening. 10,000 kilos is, what, 10 metric tons?
It's 10 metric tons. That's 22,000 pounds of gold.
Right. So this isn't just a few smuggled bars. This is like industrial scale evasion if the allegations are true. And the total value they're linking this to.
The figure floating around is US $50 million.
50 million. Wow.
And you have to understand that 50 million, if it represents unpaid duties and royalties, that's a significant hit to Guyana's national treasury.
Yeah.
Gold is huge for their economy.
Yeah, absolutely. So evading taxes on that much gold over potentially 7 years, that's not just a U.S. issue. It undermines things in Guyana directly.
Precisely. It hits their fiscal stability.
So the mechanics. How do you allegedly move 10 tons of gold without paying the dues? What did the sources say they were doing?
It sounds almost, well, basic in a way, but obviously effective if it worked for years. Falsified customs declarations.
Okay.
And crucially, reusing official export seals. So imagine you have a seal that says duty paid, cleared for export. They were allegedly just using them again.
Recycling the paperwork to make unpaid shipments look legit.
That's the idea. Making vast amounts of gold essentially disappear from the tax records, disguised as shipments that had already been accounted for.
That takes some serious planning and knowledge of the system's weak points.
It suggests a very meticulous operation, yes.
Okay, so that's the alleged mechanism.
Yeah.
But these indictments, they often need some concrete examples, right?
Yeah.
Things that make it real. What specifics do the sources mention?
Yeah, they do. The big one, the most direct piece of evidence mentioned, is a shipment seized at Miami International Airport.
Oh, really? How much?
$5.3 million worth of undeclared gold. Just sitting there, seized. That's where the paper trail kind of hits a wall, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah.
A physical seizure like that, it's hard to argue with. And was it just gold? Or were there other things?
Interestingly, no. The sources also mention something else, which sort of reinforces the pattern. Alleged under-invoicing.
On what?
On a luxury car. A vehicle valued at over $680,000 US.
So nearly $1 million car, and they allegedly tried to lowball the value to pay less import duty.
Seems like it. It's definitely a smaller amount compared to the gold, but it points towards a potential broader strategy, right? Using trade, any kind of trade, to avoid paying what's owed.
Okay, so the crime, or alleged crime, is massive. 10 tons of gold, $50 million falsified papers. Now, the really tricky part, getting them from Guyana to a U.S. courtroom.
Exactly. This is where it gets legally fascinating. The U.S. can't just, send agents over and grab them. There has to be a legal framework.
Extradition.
And the basis for this request is, well, it's quite old. It's based on an extradition treaty between Guyana and the United Kingdom.
Wait, the UK? Not the U.S. and Guyana. Why the UK? Guyana's been independent for decades.
I know, it sounds strange, right? But this is the key. When Guyana became independent, it kept certain laws and treaties in force. This old UK extradition treaty is one of them.
Huh.
It's still legally binding under Guyana's own laws, specifically something called the Fugitive Offenders Act. So the U.S. is essentially using this old UK treaty as the legal doorway into Guyana for this extradition.
Wow. So international law is using historical agreements left over from the colonial era.
In this case, yes, it's legal history playing out right now.
Okay, that suddenly makes the procedural stuff way more important.
Yeah.
The U.S. has to prove they're following the rules of this specific historical act, not just general international practice.
Absolutely. Which brings us back to that November 10th court date. It was all about showing compliance.
So what did they actually present? What documents did they show the magistrate?
The prosecution team laid out 3 key items. First, a formal diplomatic note that's government-to-government communication.
Right.
Second, an authenticated statement signed by the United States Secretary of State themselves. Very high level.
Right, showing official backing.
And third, the actual executed warrants of arrest for both Nazar and Azruddin Mohamed issued based on the U.S. indictment.
So basically proving this is a formal, legitimate request following all the steps laid out in that old act.
Precisely. They need to establish the bona fides of the request, show they've done their homework according to Guyana's law, which incorporates this treaty.
And the purpose of all that is for the court in Guyana to decide what exactly.
Whether the U.S. has made out what's called a prima facie case for extradition.
Okay, prima facie. Break that down for us. What does that actually mean in this context? Is the court deciding if they're guilty?
No, not at all. Prima facie just means on the face of it. The magistrate isn't weighing guilt or innocence. She's looking at the evidence package from the U.S., the indictment, the warrants, the statement, and asking, is there enough here, legally speaking, under the treaty's terms, to suggest a crime covered by the treaty was committed?
Ah, okay. So it's like, is there enough smoke here to justify sending them to the U.S. where the actual the trial would happen?
That's a good way to put it. It's a check on the sufficiency of the request according to the agreed legal standard, not a trial on the merits.
Got it. That makes that November 10th hearing incredibly significant then. It's the gateway. And presumably the initial arrest back in October also had to follow strict procedures.
Oh, definitely. The sources say the formal arrest happened after the U.S. made its official request on October 30th, 2025. But crucially, the Guyanese authorities couldn't just act on the U.S. warrant alone.
What do they need?
They needed an authority to proceed from the government of Guyana itself. This was presented by a legal team, including a King's Counsel, Terrence Williams. It's mandated under that same Fugitive Offenders Act.
So every step has to be carefully managed to respect Guyanese law and sovereignty, even when fulfilling an international request.
Exactly. Protecting the rights of the accused under their own legal system is paramount, even during extradition.
Okay, so we've got the huge alleged crime, the complex historical legal framework. But this whole thing didn't just pop up overnight, right? This feels like something that's been brewing.
Oh, absolutely. The sources make it clear this was a long time coming. This wasn't a sudden move.
How long are we talking? When did U.S. authorities even start looking into Mohamed's enterprise?
The intelligence gathering goes way back. We're talking the mid-2010s.
Oh.
And the cooperation between U.S. and Guyanese law enforcement sharing information, that dates back to at least 2016, maybe 2017.
So years before the main period of the alleged fraud even started, according to the indictment.
Correct, which suggests they were building a picture over a very long period. Years of quiet investigation, intel sharing.
Before anything became public. So what was the trigger? What finally pushed this from behind-the-scenes investigation into formal action, into sanctions and extradition requests?
The big turning point seems to be the use of financial weapons, specifically sanctions from the U.S. Treasury Department.
OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control.
That's the one. In June 2024, OFAC sanctioned both Mohamed's and their company, Mohamed's Enterprise.
And the grounds for the sanctions?
Pretty much mirrored the later indictment. Alleged tax evasion, trade-based money laundering, gold smuggling.
Now, for listeners maybe not familiar, why are OFAC sanctions such a big deal? What does that actually do?
OFAC sanctions are powerful. They essentially cut off the target person or company from the U.S. financial system. Any assets they have in the U.S. get frozen. U.S. persons and companies are generally prohibited from dealing with them.
So it's like economic exile.
It's a major economic blow, yes. It cripples their ability to operate internationally, especially if they deal in U.S. dollars. By hitting them with sanctions in June 2024, the U.S. basically put them on notice, put massive pressure on them months before the criminal indictment was unsealed.
Okay, that timing is crucial.
Yeah.
Sanctions first, then the indictment becomes public later.
Exactly. And after those sanctions hit, the U.S. officially notified the government of Guyana through diplomatic channels. The cooperation ramped up.
And then came the evidence sharing.
Right. In March 2025, so several months after the sanctions, but still before the indictment was unsealed, the U.S. provided Guyana with a comprehensive evidence package. This was done under mutual legal assistance agreements that exist between the countries.
And what was reportedly in that package? What convinced Guyana to eventually issue that authority to proceed for the arrest?
It seems like this was the real meat of the case. Reports say it included specific proof evidence of those falsified customs declarations we talked about.
The dodgy paperwork.
Yeah. Detailed irregularities in gold exports and, critically, information about those gold shipments that were actually seized in Miami. Concrete stuff linking the alleged paper trail fraud to physical acts.
Okay, so that dossier was likely the key to getting Guyanese authorities formally on board with the extradition process.
It seems highly probable, yes.
And the number of U.S. agencies involved really underscores the scope, doesn't it? It wasn't just, say, the Treasury.
No, the sources mention the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA.
DEA. Why them for gold smuggling?
Well, large-scale money laundering, especially using commodities like gold, often overlaps with narcotics trafficking routes or methods. The financial networks can be similar, so DEA involvement isn't actually that surprising.
Okay, that makes sense. Who else?
The FBI, obviously, for the fraud and conspiracy aspects, and the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, likely because of the customs violations and border security issues, like that Miami seizure.
So a multi-agency federal effort. DEA, FBI, DHS, Treasury, all focus on this one enterprise.
It definitely signals how seriously they viewed this alleged operation, a unified front.
Right. So let's bring it up to the present. After that November 10th hearing where the U.S. presented its documents, where do things stand right now?
Okay, so Nizar and Azruddin Mohamed, they remain out on bail. It was set at $150,000 each.
Still relatively low for a case involving alleged $50 million fraud, but bail nonetheless.
Indeed. And the legal matter itself, the extradition case, is adjourned. The next date is November 24th, 2025.
And what's expected to happen on the 24th?
It's set down for report, which likely means the court is giving both sides, especially the defense, time to review those formally submitted documents, the diplomatic note, the Secretary of State's declaration, the warrants. Then they'll likely discuss the next steps regarding that prima facie determination.
Okay, so the wheels of justice are turning, albeit slowly and carefully. Looking at this whole complex picture, what's the main thing you think our listeners should take away? It's easy to get lost in the legal weeds.
I think the biggest takeaway is watching the process unfold. The Attorney General's office in Guyana has emphasized that everything will be done strictly according to that Fugitive Offenders Act, respecting the Guyanese constitution.
Due process is key.
Absolutely. This whole case is like a live demonstration of how international law enforcement works in the 21st century when tackling complex, cross-border, white-collar crime. It's slow, it's meticulous, it relies on cooperation, and it navigates these sometimes ancient legal frameworks.
The long arm of the law reaching across oceans and, in a way, across time, using those old treaties.
And that, I think, is the most provocative thought here. You have this situation involving potentially high-tech money laundering, vast sums, global gold markets, and the tools being used to bring it to justice are this strange mix. On one hand, you have the very modern, very potent weapon of OFAC financial sanctions, cutting off access to the global financial system almost instantly.
Right, the immediate economic pressure.
But on the other hand, the entire legal justification for even getting them into a U.S. court rests on this inherited treaty, a piece of paper agreed between Guyana and the U.K. decades ago. It's the blend of the hyper-modern financial tool and the deep-rooted historical legal obligation that makes this possible.
That really highlights the permanence of international agreements, doesn't it? Even old ones.
It absolutely does. So keep an eye on that November 24th date. Seeing how the court handles that prima facie question, based on documents rooted in history, will be the next critical step.